All right, let's try this again. All right, sorry about that, guys. Don't know why, but it wouldn't let me add Juan, so I'm just going to wait here until he jumps back in. So someone asked what kind of classes we're doing. Basically, it's just 60 minutes, which is really weird and short for us, but just trying to get people to move around. It's interesting, a little experiment, because everybody has different amount of space and equipment restrictions and things like that. So it is definitely a little bit of a learning curve for us right now. But what's up, Iris? Yeah, we're gonna figure it out. I think what's nice is that it gets everybody a chance to see each other and touch base. And for me, it's really nice because kind of using it as a break in the middle of my morning training, and I get to do what I love to do, which is teach and lead classes. So I taught the classes today, or teaching the classes today, and then Liav is going to be teaching the classes tomorrow, which will be cool. And then Matt is going to do the day after tomorrow, which is is today Monday? Today's Monday. It's getting easy to forget. What's up, Bill? All right. I lost Juan, so we're going to just keep waiting here. Yeah, I think the interesting thing that I'm trying to figure out right now, kind of everyone, is just how to get into a routine. One of the things I was telling some of my students this morning, who got to hang out and chat a little bit after the class, was using a notebook from a company called Best Self Co. And what's nice is they kind of give you a template for planning your day. So what I'm trying to do right now is plan my day the night before and give myself some structure to stay consistent with, and hopefully, not hopefully, already it's proving to be pretty nice. All right, and represent Seattle today. I guess while we wait for Juan to get connected, if anybody has questions they want to start throwing at us, Juan's an interesting guy. He's kind of the dark horse in the mentorship group. He's a quiet guy, but he's one of the smartest guys I know for sure. One of the few true researchers, I think, in the group, where he's really testing and thinking about things. He's also a pretty amazing BJJ practitioner as well. And we're going to try and connect again. We're having some issues. There we go. Hey. Sorry, sir. You're going to have to take your headphones out before you go through security.
Right. I haven't heard that in a while, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, most of us. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Sorry about all the logistics. Yeah.
No. So it was pretty funny last night. We spent like 15 minutes trying to figure out what time it would be in Australia and what time it would be here in Boulder for us to talk, and like what day it would be also. This is why
crazy.
This is why we're movement guys. Because maybe the math and is not our strong suit.
Totally.
Cool. So I was just kind of telling everyone a little bit about you. Basically, Juan's an interesting guy. He comes from a circus background, and correct me if I say anything wrong here, but he comes from a circus background, which is something I want to spend most of the time talking about today, because it's very different than a lot of the other folks in the mentorship group. and you're also a pretty serious BJJ practitioner. Juan is definitely one of these guys who can put his mind to really complex tasks and figure a lot of stuff out. So he helped me a little bit with. No, it's true. He's definitely a thinker, and it's an interesting person to talk to. So I guess if you want to just kind of give everyone a little bit of the lowdown on your background before you came to training, kind of a movement practice and your experience in circus school, that'd be I think that would be cool.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the kind words, and you've also helped me very much, and you're someone that I admire a lot. That's why I wanted to contribute to this.
No, I appreciate it.
So yeah, it's my pleasure. Yeah, just before joining the mentorship and all of this, I had been performing. Generally, I wouldn't just say in circus, and this is related to the second circus school that I attended in France, where, interestingly enough, they have more like a generalist approach to developing performers rather than like a more traditional circus school when you are creating acrobats per se. Yeah, my career wasn't too long. It was 10 years total. And I first came to Australia to attend the National Institute of Circus Arts here in Melbourne. That was 3 years, where I specialized in Chinese pole and hand balancing, and those were the main things that I was doing, and obviously some other things on the side. And then after a few years performing, I wanted to get into this other circus school in France, which is very well known. It's one of the oldest ones as well, the CNAC. But this is also more related to the fact that I was in art school before going to circus school back home.
I smile because this explains a lot about you.
Yeah, so I was studying filmmaking, and I had to basically postpone this to go to circus school. And then once I was done with the first one and I started working, it always got me that people was, referring to this as circus arts. And not to say that I was disappointed, not at all, but I just kept thinking, because the approach and the process of creating and performing was completely different to, the previous experiences that I had when it came to visual arts and filmmaking and photography and other things. And I was basically thrown into the circus world. I didn't know much about it. So I had no clue that there was, all this system of schools, mainly in Europe, where the art form had been developed so much further. Oddly enough, France. And I got my first exposures, and then I realized that was the missing link for me, and that's what I wanted to continue my studies and then go over there. And as I was telling you, the approach is more towards being a generalist, if you know what I mean. It's the technique that you might have serves a purpose for you as an artist, rather than you being more of a vessel for this amazing display of acrobatics or whatever, which happens with many other big circus. Let's say nothing wrong with that, but you have these amazing acrobats who are on stage doing quintuple flips, but it's about the trick, it's not about themselves. Whereas if you're performing, the technique that you have, it's just another tool that you use, so.
Can you expand a little bit? You kind of said something about like the difference between like the kind of art side of it as in terms of a creative outlet versus a performance. Can you expand a little bit on that? Like,
Yeah, for sure. This is, we could spend hours talking about this. First of all, there's much debate. They say that circus, as an art form, does not have its proper language.
mm-hmm.
And the more contemporary type of circus that we see nowadays would be borrowing aspects artistically from dance, from theater, for instance. Nowadays, more from like, let's say, visual arts as well with projection and technology. But it's more of a combination as opposed to a pure entity, if you like. In France, they've done a lot more research in the matter, and there's one side that are extremely, let's say, strict. So, for instance, they say that if the setup of the performance it's not round, it's not a circle,
Mm-hmm.
then we cannot call it circus.
Mm.
Anyhow, basically, the biggest, let's say, difference would be having a display, a virtuous display of physicality.
Mm-hmm.
Anything. It could be hand balancing, it could be tumbling, it could be something aerial, it could be juggling, where essentially you create a platform to display these tricks, and you add, you embellish these things with a certain music that might add dramatic effects, and then you have lights and colors and all of this. Versus, let's say, someone using, I'm gonna say something, out of, probably the easiest example. Sorry, it's been a while since I talked about this. So let's take the circus apparatus as a prop.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So imagine the pole, that it's much more common nowadays with pole dancing and all of that. So the traditional display, let's say you're a strong performer and you have all your tricks, human flags and whatnot. And then just to present it on stage, you could either come up with almost an excuse. So you can have a character of a firefighter at the station, and there's an emergency, and so you come in with your firefighter costume, and you create this dynamic with the pole, and you start showing them tricks.
Yeah.
Or let's say the other approach, which I'm not saying it's better or anything, and at the end of the day it can be quite confusing, would be dealing with the physicality aspect of it, which is extremely limited in a way, and you're confined to this climb of up and down continuously. So, someone could claim, I'm gonna work with the idea of Sisyphus pushing the rock up and down, as this image of the eternal cycle of whatever. And you work with that, so there is not clear character work or anything like that. And all the tricks that you're doing are serving you as a purpose to deal with that, Now, at the end of the day, this comes more from your drive as an artist, as opposed to imagining that most people in the audience will able to perceive this concept that you might have.
Yeah, unless it's like explained to them ahead of time.
Correct. And this start to make things too snobby, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember when I was in France, I went to this dance performance. It was super out there, it's one of the craziest things that I've seen. And there was a Q&A with the choreographer, and someone in the audience just asked, or just mainly said, like, yeah, I'm sorry to say, but I did not get anything out of this. I didn't understand what was the purpose of this. And the choreographer said like, yeah, maybe you were lacking the intelligence to interpret this. And I'm like, oh wow, yeah, definitely, this is not for me. You know.
So
So yeah,
what,
please.
yeah, so I guess then my question would be like, was there like a point when you kind of made a strong decision to start to move away from the circus arts? And did that have anything to do with like you getting more involved in the general movement practice?
Yeah, there were many factors there. The traveling was a big one for me.
Hmm.
Just being on the move all the time. Um, Many other questions started popping. For example, I realized that performing and being on stage was something that most people would take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to question what it was that drove me to be on stage. And it certainly wasn't fame or anything like that. And I actually started to realize that I enjoyed more the physicality, the process of creating and exploring through the body, and then being able to communicate and interact with others through this medium rather than perform, be on stage.
Or more teaching.
Well, teaching is performing as well in a different way, in a
Yeah,
more honest. It's a more
100%.
the connection with the students. It's there. It's immediate, and you see the value out of it. You know, I'm not saying that that doesn't happen when you're on stage, but the last show that I was performing on was big. It was a big company, big names. You know, and I remember always having to, you know, mingle with the big names and all of this, and kind of like the scene behind it. And I wasn't a big fan of that. I enjoyed more meeting the people, and you know.
Yeah.
So when I am teaching, when we're all teaching, there's this performing aspect to it. You know, you might have your teaching voice. Uh, you still have to perform and demo the different things as well. You know. Some still have a bit of a stage fright when they have to do this, you
Yeah.
know, in events and workshops. So it's very closely related for sure. Yeah, and then after all these years, I finally started to find again that balance and let's say that creative drive that came from all those years in school and performing afterwards to further develop the practice and the content that we study. And you know, a lot of the time it's just I'll spend hours in the gym just working with an idea, and 95% of what comes out it's never shared with others, not because it's not valuable, but I'm still doing that for myself. And yeah,
Yeah.
I always find other things that, you know, I would share with Ido, with you guys, and with the students. So that is still there, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about is just a little bit kind of how you run your group over there. So like I kind of said when I did the first attempt at this broadcast, the thing that's interesting about Juan is you're kind of this elusive dark figure in the shadows, in my opinion. It's true. You know, I think you have a group of people who I know are very serious and train with you on your side of Australia, and you bring them to movement camp, and we see like it's very clear to see like how hard they work and how much you push them and teach them. But you're definitely, it's not like, I know it's not like us at BMC or like at Modus and stuff where it's like kind of this bigger group. You don't have as far as I know, a dedicated facility. You're training outdoors. You're training in rented places, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
But I wanted to just like, yeah, I just wanted to get that because, you know, you'll pop up every once in a while. You'll post some clips on Instagram. They're amazing. They're really cool stuff. And then you
Thank you.
disappear back into the shadows again. You know, you're not as bad as Johnny Sapinoso. I think his last few posts on Instagram was Movement Camp 2019 and then Movement Camp 2020. There might be one post in between, which I think is a video of Liav. So,
yeah, right.
but yeah, just kind of like talk about your group and how you structured it, because I think one thing a lot of people don't understand with the mentorship group and those of us who run facilities is there's no outline and structure. We're all kind of doing things our own way, which is this nice freedom that we have to kind of explore and experiment. And I wanted you to speak about that a little bit.
Yeah, no problem. Well, one of the main factors with that was that joining the mentorship happened at the same time as me moving back to Australia.
Mm-hmm.
When I decided to stop performing and coming back here and starting a new life with my wife, I didn't have a clear plan of what I would be doing. And literally 2 months before coming back, Ido mentioned this whole mentorship thing. So when I got here, although I had lived in Melbourne for many years, I had to figure out how to make things work, and I had to understand more, you know, let's say the market, and and how everything operates here. So it was a very slow process. It was clear, however, from the get-go that I didn't want to have a facility to run initially. Like, I thought of it maybe down the track, but now the more time passes, it's clear that that's not what I want to do. And that was mainly because I knew very soon after watching how things worked here that that would mean that I would become more of a business person, and I'd have to deal with the admin and all of this. And clearly what I wanted was to teach and continue and develop and practice. So luckily, I had the support from many of my students who either had facilities or knew a bit more. So I was able to start using their space to teach here and there. At first, it was just one class per week on the Saturdays. And it all started to grow from there, you know. I tried all different models because I am, as you could tell from, probably took me 7 attempts to join the transmission, I am not tech savvy. I don't know how to really use social media and algorithms and stuff like that. So I was trying to create these events week by week.
Can I tell you something? Nobody knows. There's just people who pretend to know, and they sell that fake service to other people. So
yeah, fair enough. That's good to hear. And I started to grow from there, you know, without having to advertise. It was just word of mouth. You know, people started to talk about it. Every now and then I would get a boost in attention because Ido would mention something on social media, or Roy would share something on Instagram. But it was clear that through these waves of attention that I would get, the people who would contact me were not necessarily the type of person that was interested in what I had to offer, you know. It was very difficult for me because I didn't compromise. Like, from the very first class, it was 2 hours, you know. I never tried like 1 hour or 90, so it was just 2 hours, you know.
yeah.
So yeah, many people were like, no, yeah, that's not for me, or this or that. So it took a good year, I would say, to build the core group of students that I have. And currently, you know, there's classes 6 days a week, and I still do, let's say, one-on-one work with some of them as well. But that's more specific to the needs that they have.
Yeah, and is this with all of your students? You do have one-on-one work, or is it kind of like
No,
people who come to class? Okay, so
no, it's not. It's not all of them. It's very few of them, but it's also a regular process in itself. It's not that I randomly do one-on-ones.
gotcha.
Yeah, and they still come to the group classes and all of this. But this allows also, for example, one of my students, it's a MMA fighter, so having that one-on-one time allows us to go deeper into some ideas that are more relevant,
Yeah,
or we can adapt the content a bit more, but it's still reinforced by the group activities and the group classes and all of that.
and you feel that's essential, right? Like the one-on-one training is one aspect, but you feel like it's like kind of a requirement that they also be involved in the group classes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because for most of them still, you know, they might have a very specific or specialized pathway currently, but they see the value and they still want to develop, you know, the whole practice, let's say. Plus we have a great community here in Melbourne, you know, and they're
Yeah.
so supportive of one another that people miss these things anyhow, so, you know. Yeah.
Gotcha. And like to an extent, and correct me if I'm wrong, like I know you also kind of push your students a little bit more academically. Like I was talking to a few of your students in at movement camp, and I was asking them, I was like, oh, like how is it, you know, how's it been? Like have you know, talked to Juan much? And they're like, yeah, Juan came and told us that we were going to write essays on each of the classes from camp. And I thought that was really, do you remember this? I thought that was really interesting. And I kind of wonder like what came from that, and like, you know, what, I guess some people would ask why, right? So kind of what was your inspiration behind having someone spend some time to write something about the sessions? Because those of you who don't know, at movement camp, it's like usually five or six classes.
Yeah, 5 or 6, yeah.
5 or 6 different classes led by different teachers. So
Yeah.
I guess, what was your inspiration or your motivation rather?
Well, many things. The first thing that was clear for me was when I look back at my first diary from the first movement camp that I attended, you know, and I thought that my writing skills from notes and workshops were good, and then I realized that it was extremely poor. And there was content that was lost forever, let's say. And then going back through meeting a lot of people while I was at circus school, there was this lady who was also trying to develop a writing system for movement, kind of like the way you write music and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then many other things going through the different process of teaching and learning, where terminology is key, but it might not be enough. Or the skill of drawing and improving your stick figures and stuff like this to develop your eye. And then the other thing as well was languages, different languages as well, you know. You start to realize the problem with words, the problem of choosing the most accurate word, and the ways to rather quickly make some sort of like a register of what it is that you are dealing with in that learning environment, because in movement camp it's on the go.
Yeah.
You know, you write your notes directly, then
you're doing the exercise.
You go back and then maybe you share some of them with some of the other participants. And the whole thing, I remember years ago when Ido started talking about clarity as a huge attribute. The words you choose, whenever we're in class and I ask questions and they reply or they ask questions, we constantly go like, what do you mean by this? Why do you choose this word or that word? Then going through that process of asking them to write a diary and some notes of it, it's just to reinforce that good habit, you know, having to sit back and go like, why do I actually mean by this? Why do I truly get out of this? And also to reinforce more than anything the idea that this is an educational process, you know.
Yeah, as opposed to like experiential.
Correct. So developing those skills, it's extremely important, you know, and you see most of my students, then they get interested into reading more.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of them sign up for like this online drawing course as
Oh,
well.
that's cool.
And yeah, you can clearly see other things. Something that I've been recently more interested in, it's also in the transmission of knowledge, and you see the subtleties in these things. For example, when you study the art of calligraphy,
Mm-hmm.
and how through the gesture that you choose, you can embed information as well.
That's really interesting. So there's the Hebrew Bible, the Torah is written, and it has something called trope in it, and it's essentially like inflections and notes. So you're supposed to, you learn the language, but you also learn the trope and the inflection. It's something like if you're young and you have a bar bat mitzvah, it's something that you learn. But it was always something interesting, I realized. But I never thought about calligraphy in that way as well. But it makes perfect sense, especially from like a monastic kind of approach where calligraphy came from. Like, of course, it was like this artistic and inflection as well. So maybe emotional or otherwise. But that's a really good point. So like, is this something you talk about and work on regularly in your normal classes, or is that kind of like, you know, because I said it was Jules who told me about this in at movement camp. Is that something you work on regularly with your students, or you encourage?
Yeah, 100%, you know. And you see like people jump in, you know, almost immediately. You get new people in the class, and they see everyone with their diaries and taking notes every 5 minutes and at the end of the class. So then usually the next class they all come prepared and they have their own diaries and notebooks. And
I hope my students are listening, because this is something I'm on them a lot about. I want more notes. I want more note taking.
Yeah, that's extremely important. And then just a little note again on you know, the gestures and calligraphy. Imagine if you were to, even if you are very talented with your drawing, how would you, for example, make a note about Esther Brown into helicoptero, right?
Yeah.
So you have to reinforce your notes and some stick figures, but then there might be a certain gesture with a curve in direction that you can add to this that will translate, at least in your head, into the twist and the motion of the move, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting because you know, you talk about like looking at your old notes, and so every once in a while, not every once, pretty regularly, I go back through my notes, and I've been digitizing them and redrawing, and it's two things. One, what you said before about the lost information is 100% true, and I know it's there. Even on the notes that I've taken more recently that I think is better, there's an inherent kind of loss. But definitely the stuff in the beginning. Anthony was a huge inspiration for me to get back into drawing, because it was something I'd done a lot when I was younger. But seeing his notes, the speed that he could sketch was inspiring, and also it was very clear to like watching Odelia do a sequence of locomotion and then looking at Anthony's notes. Even for me, not drawing those things, I could see what the action was. So I could see something that was that had velocity, that had direction, and that had three dimensions in a one-dimensional drawing, and I thought that was something impressive. And if people haven't seen Anthony's illustrations, are amazing. He's an incredible artist. He's an incredible drawer, and also I think, no surprise, an incredible acrobat as well.
Correct. Yeah, well, extremely valid points as well. And I'd like to add that even the process of learning how to draw makes you think a lot. I remember when I got my first drawing class in art school, you know, and I'd been drawing my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like my grandfather used to draw, and my dad, they all painted and stuff like that. So yeah. but I had never like formal lessons. And I remember in university, the first one that I had, I was thinking, here we go, we're gonna go like human anatomy,
Yeah.
like stuff like that. First 6 months,
Yeah.
tables. You draw a table. And I'm like, what is this? And the very first classes, you realize that you don't understand perspective and the discrepancy
Yeah,
between
geometric shapes
what
are
you
fucking
see.
hard.
Yeah, what you see and what you put down in the paper, it's gigantic. And actually, this is the same thing when you're learning and you watch things as well. What is it? Where is your focus? What is it that you're really seeing, and how do you represent this, and how do you deal with it, visually? So the drawing in itself, for me at least, reinforces this as well. Develops, it's what we call developing the eye.
Yeah.
You know?
And you're saying like doing that for something like like an inanimate object, for like, so drawing tables, this has helped you think, in developing the eye for like physical movement as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's obviously more complex.
Yeah,
but, for sure. Yeah. And that's also you start to get rid of, you can truly, we were talking more about the shen of things,
yeah,
the outline, the essence of things as well. But it helps you understand and recognize certain patterns. And again, it's also not only with that, but with concepts, for instance. It truly reinforces that in a way, how we all, I think, work and try to help and develop students. There's all different types of learning techniques and approaches and methods. So you could be, visual learner, kinematic, more someone who needs the theory and information, but ultimately we want all of our students to have all those tools anyhow. So
yeah, absolutely. Like, I know, I mean, and that's the thing that's always tough in the beginning, especially like there's certain aspects that can be taught maybe more easily in one way or the other, but ultimately, like, if you're doing acrobatics or you're teaching acrobatics with something that's highly dynamic, and for instance, I can't give kinesthetic feedback, I can't touch you maybe when you're doing something like that, this is where these other skills come in. We had a student for a while who's legally blind, so like his visual ability was, like he said, like maybe looking through like a small straw. And it was interesting in one class how quickly you would have to adapt to making sure that you wouldn't say, okay, look, and then demonstrate something, but really trying to explain. And what was interesting is he picked things up faster than our students who were able-bodied and could see.
Right.
So it shows, I mean, obviously, like, there's certain limitations, but this ability that we have to like push and learn in different ways. And I think, like, I don't know if it's something you can expand on more with, like, maybe how you would help a student who has maybe one predisposition more than another. But it's for sure a challenge, especially with the kind of the diversity of people that we have coming through our doors.
Yeah, the main point for me with that is that it's not that you want to discard the abilities that they might have, but usually what I do is to say, like, okay, this is a good approach for you and it works in this scenario, but maybe in this way you're missing certain aspects. So it's not to say like this is wrong. You shouldn't always have to move as you're learning to understand and figure things out, but more to say this is innate in you. It might be your preferred way, but let's actually try to deal with this from a different angle. Most of the time as well, the partner work, when they're helping each other, reinforces this in many ways.
Yeah.
Whenever I break things down, and this is something that I learned from Ido, the very early years, I'll repeat myself over and over and over. The words that you choose to explain this, and also how they have to, the words that they use to give feedback to one another.
Okay, can you give an example?
Um, oh, okay, what would be a good example with this? Um, they, I always tell them that they have to be able to break things down in the most basic way, you know? So although you might establish very specific terminology with angles and stuff like this, um, if you fail to give a correction to someone that requires, I don't know, more than 10 words of whatever, it might be just too complex, or your understanding it's not fully there yet.
Interesting.
Yeah. The other thing that I force, because I have many of my students there, they also teach and coach, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's try to, you know, the old ones, don't demo to help people. If you're correcting people, you should not demo to them as well. You demo in the beginning, but then, you know, when I see someone struggle, I might demo a move. I always ask them, if you want me to do it, I'll do it 50 times for you.
Yeah.
The moment it's there.
Yeah.
But then when they're struggling, I just, with a lot of patience, we go over it and I say, like, place your hand there or this action there. And you can see that there's that dual process going on when you see them not only executing the move, but they're breaking away from, let's say, the need to actually try to follow simultaneously.
Gotcha.
as they do the move. And then with the choosing of words, this just takes time more and more. They find their own way to explain things. It's very interesting. And we might do, I remember a few months back, we were doing a cycle of locomotion work, working with a closed system. And they had to work with one another, alternating rounds like many of us do, you know. And I asked them, like, you have to pay attention to what the partner is doing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the training, you would have to give feedback to your partner, at least 5 things that they can improve and work on. The first sessions that we did this,
Yeah.
I always ask him, so what did your partner tell you? And you see that most of them would just give each other compliments. And I said, like, this is all nice and beautiful, but that's not the point of this, you know? And it's not that you have to destroy your partner's performance, but you have to start picking up certain things. This was not to say that the point is not to go like, you have to develop your style or your dynamics are flat or this. No, that's not what I meant, you know? But very relevant things. So for example, don't look down all the time, or this or that, or your hands, you know? So it was extra effort to help them go and have to break away from, I can demo this very well, but I don't know what words to choose to explain this, or, you know. So yeah, those are ways that we use here.
That's cool. It's interesting, you know, that one of the things that's always cool is like just to hear things like obviously similarities between how we teach, which is no surprise, like we have the same teacher, but even kind of like ideas and methodologies that we come up to that are similar. I think things that I've done in the past that have worked is like telling, especially my more senior students, is like, we're going to be doing locomotion work, and none of my instruction will involve means just maybe examples. We've also started experimenting a little bit with only narrative work, so the person has to explain what they want to see, and then what's always interesting is to see like whether or not the person performed it well. And now the question is, was it your lack of proper communication, or was it their misunderstanding of what you said? So there's always some interpretation there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. All right. We got like 10 more minutes because Instagram cuts us off at 1 hour. So I think to wrap things up, what I kind of I've been asking everybody is what you're doing right now to kind of support and handle things with your students, and kind of, I don't know, any ideas or things that have been working out well for you guys?
Well, the main thing has been to give them more support with the stillness practice. If you remember the last meeting that we had,
very well.
I mentioned that for me, the timing, like trying to expose people into the stillness, didn't feel very honest, very clean. Just because I felt that it's something that I'm barely just scratching the surface of. But then speaking to this, like it's relevant and it's important that you share these things. And I always try to, I have the tendency to wait too long before sharing things. A bit of a perfectionist with this, something that I'm trying to improve as well.
You're being a perfectionist about not being a perfectionist?
In a way, letting go more.
Good.
So I started to give them more tools to implement with the stillness, and then we started to do a little bit more guided work as we do this in the sessions.
Yeah.
And the feedback has been great, because obviously the main thing that you can see, it's higher levels of anxiety and fear, tension building up in all ways, physical tension, mental tension, and even emotional as well. So this is something that it's extremely important, I would say. And in the last 10 days or so, where we've reinforced this, the feedback from the students has been just, quite powerful, and they're really appreciating that as well. So that is the main thing
That's
that
really
we've been
great.
doing. Yeah. And yeah, we'll see. It's still like a day-by-day type of thing. So as everything unfolds and evolves, we'll see what other things are relevant to do.
Good, man. Well, I guess we'll wrap things up a little bit. That was 50 minutes and it flew by.
Wow, it goes super fast.
I know, right? It's pretty crazy. I want to do more of these, and there's definitely, there's more conversation to be had with you. One, it's just you're someone I want to talk to more anyway, just in my regular life. So I might as well use this as a platform to kind of do that. But I know it's something that other people appreciate as well. I'm just gonna make a request for everyone else. Post more material, man. Like, it doesn't have to be all the time, but share more. You're such a great person to watch. I enjoy watching you move. I think it gives me insights into how you think, and it's different than the way I process information and whatnot, but it inspires me, and it excites me. So please don't be shy, and be better at not being a perfectionist. Okay.
Okay.
All right, man.
I'll work on that.
All right. Thank you for braving the perils of Instagram with me. So I figured out how to save these videos, and I'm going to be posting them on YouTube at some point. So I have Rodrigo's from yesterday. Juan, I'm going to save yours as well, if that's okay with you. Man, I appreciate you. A lot of love.
Likewise, a lot of love.
Enjoy your morning. It is the 24th there. 23rd?
Yes, 24th.
We figured it out, guys.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, brother. Big hug. Yeah. Talk to you
hug.
soon. All right, man.
Later.
Bye.